all of the keyboard shortcuts. All right, with that said, I will go ahead and start the video so you can see our lovely presenter today. And I'm going to adjust the camera just a little bit. Give me a second. Hang on 1 second. I'm still working on it. There we go. All right. We have our lovely lady here. And if you would not mind, Zenaida, would you tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll go ahead and get started on the session.
Sure. Thank you, Randy. Thank you for the great introduction. Anyway, my name is Zenaida Olivas, and I am part of the state office transition team. And I have been in the VR field for over 17 years in different capacities, but now part of the state office transition team, where a lot of new and exciting initiatives are taking place. And today we're going to be talking about vocational rehabilitation transition services, and we're going to focus on pre-employment transition services. So let's get started. Thank you for being with us today. So vocational rehabilitation services, of course, the purpose is to help people with disabilities obtain and maintain employment that is consistent with the strengths, interests, abilities, and aptitudes. VR services are eligibility-based and tailored to the individual. They're not income-based, although income can play a role in the services, but the eligibility is not based on income. They are not intended to be emergency services. They are not time limited, but are not intended to be provided long term. So again, the focus will be on pre-employment transition services, and the goal there is to start working with the kiddos at a younger age, so that by the time they're ready to graduate, we'll have services in place, and they'll be able to go into a post-secondary education or employment. So they are arranged and provided by a vocational rehabilitation counselor with consideration for individual choice. And in transition, they work with transition counselors. The eligibility criteria, again, the customer has a physical or mental impairment. That would be the first criterion. The impairment constitutes or results in a substantial impediment to employment. That's the second criterion. The customer requires vocational rehabilitation services to prepare for, enter, engage in, or advance in competitive integrated employment consistent with the customer's strengths, resources, priorities, concerns, abilities, capabilities, interests, and informed choice. And that's the third criterion. And the customer can achieve an employment outcome unless pre-eligibility trial work experiences demonstrate by clear and convincing evidence that the customer cannot achieve an employment outcome because of the severity of the customer's disability.
This is Randy speaking. Can you explain a little bit what that last criterion means?
So basically, there is what we call a pre-eligibility trial plan when we can't determine if the person will benefit from VR services. So that places them in a situation where it will be able to get a better assessment of their abilities. So at the end of the services that are offered through that plan, the counselor will make the determination, and it also helps the parent and the customer to see if employment is something that is for them.
Very good, thank you.
So transition services are provided to help students move from high school to successful work and independent living. Through partnerships with the schools, VR provides these services to students while they are attending high school, so they will be prepared when they exit. After a person leaves high school, vocational rehabilitation services continue to be available to them if necessary. Transition services are a subset of vocational rehabilitation services for those individuals aged 14 through 22. In most cases, the services provided to transition students fall into one of these 5 pre-employment transition service categories, and that is career exploration, work-based learning, counseling on post-secondary opportunities, job readiness, and self-advocacy. And I'm going to be talking later on about some of these services through some of our initiatives and some of our contracted vendors for pre-employment transition services.
We have a question, just real quick. Is VR only for high school kids?
If it's for the age is 14 through 22. We used to before we became a designated unit, combined unit. The Division for Blind Services did serve from age 10 on up. However, the age did change. Our policy changed, and the age is now 14 through 22. We do have, however, maybe a little over 300 students that were grandfathered in because they were already receiving services, and these students might be younger than 14. But they still can be served through the Blind Children's Program.
And that's transition. But
That's
there
transition.
are other services if you're over 21?
Absolutely, yes. We do have, so the goal of transition is to, for example, like we said, the goal is to have them ready so that when they exit school and they enter either a post-secondary type of training, or a vocational training, or employment, and once they're stable in, for example, they've completed their first semester of college, or they've reached job stability, or they've completed a few months of that vocational training, then they're transferred over into our adult program. And that's where they continue to be served until the services are no longer required, or they've completed the services that, that are on their individual plan of employment. So we serve all ages. I mean, we're talking about transition services right now, but you know, eventually they will go into the adult program. That's the goal. And in the adult program, we serve different age groups.
Very cool. All right. We have some more questions, but we're going to wait.
Okay.
We'll go on.
So we have, like I mentioned earlier, TVRCs, they're assigned to various schools, and they spend most of their time on school campuses. And then, so if you're not sure who you're assigned, or who the TVRC that is assigned to your particular school is, I recommend that you contact the regional transition program specialist, and we have one in each of the 6 regions. They are listed at the end of the presentation, so if you're not sure who you should be dealing with, this is a good contact for you. And then we have the vocational rehabilitation counselors, and they have general caseloads, but some of them are assigned a high school. They are liaisons to a high school assignment, and they do serve some transition age customers. So the majority, again, of schools, they will have a counselor assigned. And again, just to remind you to contact your regional transition specialist for your area if you're not sure. And I know that there's a couple of them that are vacant, but they should have a backup. They should have somebody that you can speak to.
Perfect.
So let's talk about the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, or WIOA. Many students with disabilities are leaving secondary school without competitive integrated employment or being enrolled in post-secondary education. And there is a need to support such students as they transition from school to post-secondary life. WIOA emphasizes transition and youth services throughout. And so I'm going to talk to you about some of the strategies. Now, I'm going to discuss just some of them, because we've got quite a few, but some of them are still in the very early planning stages. So I'm going to talk about the ones that are getting closer and some that are actually already happening. And I know that a lot of people are interested in learning more about Summer Earn and Learn, so I'm going to come back to talk about Summer Earn and Learn and a couple of the other initiatives. But I'm going to give you a little bit of background for those of you who may not be aware. So in January of 2017, the Commission approved Pathways to Career, or PCI, and it's an $11.9 million initiative to expand opportunities for Texas students with disabilities to receive pre-employment transition services. PCI, Pathways to Careers, also complements and advances the tri-agency initiative by TWC, the Texas Higher Education Coordinating Board, and the Texas Education Agency by providing applied learning opportunities through internships and work experiences, ensuring that students have better information about career pathways to enable informed choices, and increasing the number of Texas students who complete a post-secondary degree or credential. So the first strategy that was implemented last May was Summer Earn and Learn. And this was a statewide work-based learning program conducted in partnership with the 28 local workforce development boards and their employer partners. More than 1,500 students with disabilities participated in employability skills training and paid work experience with a variety of Texas employers. TWC will again contract with the boards to replicate SEAL this summer with the goal of serving 2,500 students with disabilities in the program. That was the very first initiative, and again, we're getting ready to start it again this year. We also have Charting the Course, Planning for Life and Careers After High School. And this one is still kind of in the planning stages, but I just thought it's important, especially if you have a younger child that's maybe not ready to participate in a work experience type of program. The second PCI strategy, Charting the Course, Planning for Life and Careers After High School, proposes to engage students with disabilities and their families in a series of education, awareness, and planning events beginning with the students' 8th grade year. Reaching out to students at that point will engage the family earlier in preparing their child for high school, promote better planning for the students' transition activities in high school, and support a successful transition to further education and employment after high school. Charting the Course programs would involve a series of 13 education, awareness, and planning events for families over 5 years, where students with disabilities and their families learn about resources for career exploration available from Texas Workforce Commission's Labor Market and Career Information Department and employment opportunities. Information and awareness about the array of post-secondary education and training opportunities that lead to competitive integrated employment, predictors for successful employment and/or post-secondary education completion, accessing vocational rehabilitation services, assessing transition readiness, and aligning the students' individualized education program goals with a transition plan for life after high school. Understanding work incentives and the impact of employment on the students' Social Security disability benefits, and public and community services to ensure that the student with a disability has the supports and services needed to maintain employment and live independently in the community. Then there's the Explore STEM initiative, and this strategy recognizes that employers in many sectors of the economy need employees with education and skills necessary to work in science, technology, engineering, and mathematics, STEM occupations. To develop an interest in the STEM fields, students with disabilities need opportunities to learn about STEM occupations, as well as education and training pathways available to prepare them for STEM-related employment. Interactive and hands-on experiences and activities and exposure to individuals and mentors already working in this field, plays a valuable role in increasing student awareness of and interest pursuing a career in STEM field. So each of these programs will include a 1-week residential experience for students. And I know we had 8 proposals for sure, but my understanding is that as of last week, there were 9 proposals from different Texas community and technical colleges and universities. So if you talk to your transition counselor, they will know what STEM camps will be available in their regions.
So that means that not every region will have a STEM camp, correct?
Not every region, because it depends on which college submitted a proposal, but we're hoping that eventually.
Okay. We have a couple other questions related to what you've just talked about. So how does somebody sign up for the Summer Earn and Learn program?
Okay, so the contracts, the planning for Summer Earn and Learn, or SEAL, is already underway. The way that it works is they can either be referred by the school diagnostician or the VAC, or sometimes even the board will refer some people over to the transition counselor. So if you know who your transition counselor is, I would recommend that you contact them, and they can give you more information about the application process and dates, because, like, for example, in El Paso, I forgot to say that I'm housed out of El Paso. I'm part of the state office transition team, but I am housed out of El Paso. And in El Paso, they start having meetings with their local board, and they start planning this activity. And so they have already identified some of the participants, and so that process is already underway. So I'm not sure if the board in your area and the VR in your area are already there, but I would say contact your transition counselor and get it started there.
Okay, so one individual says, why haven't I learned about Earn and Learn in my rural school district? So they should just go to their VR counselor, their transition counselor?
Yes, or to your local board. So that's where I would start. And again, this was new last year, and so this is the second year that we are having this activity. So I would say that if you missed it last year, contact your VR representative, your transition counselor, or even the board. In El Paso, what they do is if somebody maybe hasn't heard about it through their transition counselor, and maybe the parent has contact with somebody at the board and they learn about it, the board will send the point of contact, because I know that, again, in El Paso, they have a VR representative who is a point of contact for SEAL. And so the board will send that referral, will email that point of contact and let her know that somebody's interested in Summer Earn and Learn. And they give her the contact information, and then she will contact them to give them information about the application process.
Okay. Some of us are in rural districts, and we only have traditional VR counselors that also serve lots of adult population in multiple counties. And I know that's a fact, that VR counselors have a large caseload. They have a lot of individuals to take care of. As a result, they struggle to take on students at a younger age or seem reluctant. Can you advise?
Well, the age for transition is 14 through 22, and really we should be taking an application at least 3 years before the student graduates from high school. So I would just recommend that you talk to them about it, and because we have counselors all over the state that have a regular caseload and also serve a transition caseload. So I would say don't give up, talk to them, and let them know that your child needs services.
And so we have another person saying they've heard it's 16 years old. It is 14.
The age for transition is 14 through 22.
Okay. Let's see. One parent says, and I just say thank you for joining us, Zenaida, because one parent says we didn't even know about these services until we heard about this webinar. So I'm glad that we're able to share this information.
I'm glad that we are able to share it, because these services are very important, and we want to reach these children at a young age and provide these services. And later on, I'm going to be talking about these pre-employment transition services. And I think the next slide maybe.
Okay, let's go.
Go.
We have
Okay.
lots of questions.
We have lots of questions.
Go ahead and get
yes.
through this, and we'll get to the questions.
So again, WIOA Title IV of the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act changes in the way transition services are provided through vocational rehabilitation. VR programs are required to spend 15% of their federal funding allocation on pre-employment transition services, or Pre-ETS, to eligible and potentially eligible students with disabilities. So this is a change, and I'm going to be talking about the potentially eligible students in a bit. Pre-ETS are intended to provide exposure to the concepts and experiences related to building skills for work and independent living, and are therefore more effective when started early. And I think the next slide is going to talk about potentially eligible, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes.
There it is. Okay. So the Workforce Innovation and Opportunity Act, WIOA, introduced a new eligibility status, which is potentially eligible, as a means to give access to pre-ETS activities. Some individuals will be able to participate as potentially eligible. So what is, or who meets the criteria for a potentially eligible? And that's, again, a student age 14 through 22 who is enrolled in a secondary, post-secondary, or recognized educational program, which may include charter schools, private schools, home schools, post-secondary schools, or other recognized settings, such as the schooling provided by juvenile justice systems. They must be receiving services through the IDEA or considered 504 eligible, including those individuals who are receiving vocational rehabilitation services. And so the difference with the potentially eligible is that they don't have to have a case with VR. So Summer Earn and Learn is a perfect example. If we have a kiddo that wants to participate in Summer Earn and Learn, but they don't want to have a case with VR or don't have a case for VR, they can participate in Summer Earn and Learn and the other initiatives that I'm going to be talking about. So that has really been a paradigm shift for us, because typically we couldn't provide services unless the services were unplanned. So the counselor couldn't purchase services until the person was determined eligible, and then they developed the plan of services. Well, this is a change for us, where these pre-employment transition services can be purchased for someone who is potentially eligible. And so if the transition counselor, let's say, for example, they get a referral from a diagnostician or a VAC for a student that wants to participate in Summer Earn and Learn and gain some work experience, but they don't necessarily want VR services, we can serve them as potentially eligible. And so where they would have to apply for services is if we place them in a job where they need additional supports, because those cannot be purchased with pre-employment transition funds, then they would have to be purchased with VR funds. Then they would have to apply for VR services. But if all they need is a work experience, then they wouldn't even have to have a case with VR. So that's something that's fairly new, and really nice, because we do have some people that, some parents that say they really don't need VR services. All they need is this type of maybe career exploration activity, maybe some job readiness, some work-based learning, and then once they complete the service, then they're served, and that's the end of that. So this is this is something fairly new to us.
That's wonderful.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so how do we get started? Work with your assigned VR counselor to refer students for services. If you aren't sure who the counselor is, call your nearest Texas Workforce Solutions Vocational Rehabilitation office or your area's regional transition specialist. The contact information is on the next slide, okay? So for a list of TWS VRS offices, visit texasworkforce.org /offices, no, it's forward / vrgeneralservices.html. And the counselor will schedule appointments at the school, in the Workforce Solutions office, or at other locations to complete the application for services. The counselor will discuss the VR process with students and parents, which includes determining eligibility and, if eligible, assessments and planning for VR. And I'm sorry, I said I was going to talk about the other initiatives, and I am. I got but I got a little ahead of myself. So, well, and I think we left off at STEM.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Sorry about that. I do have some. Okay. So then, again, we were talking about about serving. The goal is serving other students that maybe have been traditionally underserved. So we also have another initiative called the Transition Planning for Students in Private and Home Schools. And this strategy is to grow and foster partnerships that advance the participation and engagement of students with disabilities enrolled in private or homeschool education in pre-ETS activities across Texas. And this initiative in particular, the focus is work-based learning opportunities. The engagement and activities would be geared to ensure that the students educated in private or homeschool education settings are provided with opportunities to discover, explore, and begin to develop career interests, talents, and abilities that will be critical to building their future career success. And the other initiative, now transition planning is still, it's still in the planning phase. And so, but the Student Hireability Navigator, this one, the contracts have been signed, and so this should be implemented pretty soon. And so I don't know if you remember, but in the past we've had the Texas Disability Navigator. So the Student Hireability Navigator proposes to establish in each local workforce development area, and it's much like the Texas Disability Navigator. So this project would improve access to employment and training services and increase employment opportunities for job seekers with disabilities. And so the Student Disability Navigators would focus exclusively on students with disabilities. Each navigator will serve as a resource in the local workforce development area to support and enhance services provided by VR, as well as other partners and programs in the Workforce Solutions offices in that particular area. So the navigators would perform a defined scope of work in the following 3 focus areas: capacity building and systems development. Navigators would identify resources available for students with disabilities and provide that information to VR staff, along with training and technical assistance in the use of those resources as appropriate. Navigators would also develop and implement strategies to increase awareness among VR staff, local education agencies, and other workforce solution programs about the array of resources and services available to students with disabilities to assist them in transitioning successfully to post-secondary education and employment. They will also partner and collaborate. The navigators would develop and coordinate events, campaigns, and other activities to increase student and family awareness of pre-employment transition services provided by VR, other workforce solutions programs, and community partners. They will also inform and engage employers. Navigators would work with workforce solutions programs, employers, and community partners to develop, coordinate, and facilitate opportunities for career exploration, work-based learning, and work readiness activities for students with disabilities. So the overarching goal of the activities within the three focus areas is to increase the likelihood of students' independence and inclusion in communities and competitive integrated workplaces, and their successful participation in post-secondary education experiences. So again, this will be a contract with each of the 28 boards. So the smaller boards will have, or medium-sized boards will have one navigator, and then the larger board areas, there's 6 of them, that will have 2 navigators each. And so TWC will give each board the flexibility to identify board staff as navigators or to subcontract for the position. And Summer Earn and Learn is I think is a good example where probably the navigator, as the activities begin, you know, they would be very involved with that activity. So that's one of the areas where we see that. These are, and then the other, it's not an initiative, but it's something that again, we're still in the process of developing and disseminating, assessing, and providing guidance and training to staff, but it's the year-round work experience. It's called Wage Services for VR Participants in Paid Work Experiences. And basically what this is that we will contract with the board to provide wage services and the related fees, like any taxes, and so we're very excited about this because this is similar to the SEAL program, but this is year-round. So it's not going to be limited to just the summer. So this will give students the opportunity to participate in work experiences via work-based learning. And so we're very excited about this one here because I think sometimes, you know, like I think a parent was saying, we didn't hear about SEAL because it happens only in the summer and it goes by pretty fast. Well, this will be a year-round opportunity. So that's another service that we're very excited about. And so, again, there's a lot of, I know that this is a lot of information and a lot of activities happening right now. Some of the other things that are happening with Pre-ETS is that we did have some open enrollments and where we received proposals from vendors with ideas and services around the 5 core Pre-ETS areas that we discussed at the beginning. So some of them came up with some really good services. So like I know that parents that have 14-year-olds maybe say, okay, well, what services can my student receive at this age? Well, like I said, around the state, we did receive some proposals and we're at our second open enrollment. So we're hoping to even contract with more vendors. And so they are providing activities or services related to career exploration, job readiness, work-based learning, counseling on post-secondary options, work readiness training. So I can't stress enough the importance of making sure that you stay connected to your local transition counselor, so that as all of these services become available, that you are aware and hopefully are able to access these services. So I think we
Want to move on to the next slide?
yeah, we can move on to the next slide, and then if
We'll take
some questions.
Okay.
So, like I mentioned at the beginning, these are your regional transition program specialists. These are good numbers to have if you're not sure who your assigned counselor is, or if you have any questions related to transition. And then you can also contact your state office transition specialist. And the last slide, I believe, has our names. So my name is on there, my email address. If there's some questions that we can't address today, or we don't have time to address today, please feel free to email us. There's also VR Pre-ETS at twc.state.tx.us mailbox. And so anything that's related, especially to pre-employment transition services, please feel free to send us questions. We'll be more than happy to help you.
So for everyone on the webinar, make sure you hang on to these phone numbers, and especially that email address, because in 6 months you may have questions that we didn't even think about today.
Right.
I'm going to go ahead and go to some of those questions, Zenaida.
And I think we have a couple.
Oh, yes, we had some questions come in advance that you wanted to go ahead and talk about as well.
Sure, and I'll address this one as best as I can. Okay, so one of the questions is there something in a law or regulation that states transition students cannot be placed in a sheltered workshop setting until? So there is, and it is Section 511 of WIOA, and I'm gonna tell you. Let's see. Okay, so basically, they have to come to VR because before they go into a sheltered type workshop, because we want to see if they can benefit from supported employment. So that would be the reason that they would come with us. And so the sub minimum wage guidelines, this is what it states. Youth with disabilities cannot obtain sub-minimum wage situations unless the following are completed. Appropriate pre-employment transition services have been provided by VR, or transition services have been provided through special education. Application for VR services has occurred with either an ineligibility or eligibility decision. In case of eligibility decision, unsuccessful outcome results after reasonable amount of time and services on an IPE. Career counseling and provision of informed choice and referral services by VR to youth with disabilities when they become known to the agency. These services must be provided periodically throughout the time the individual is engaged in sub-minimum wage arrangements. So, and I think, did you want to add something?
Yes, and this is Randy. I do have a really good document that is from the Department of Labor that was sent out to businesses in 2016, so it's pretty recent, that addresses all of the sub-minimum wage issues and reasons why kids need to go, or individuals in general, not just transition. I need to go to VR first, see if you can benefit from VR services. Yes. So I'll include that in a follow-up email as well.
Okay, yes, and that has to do with WIOA requiring VR to spend 50% of the supported employment grant on youth with disabilities. So I hope that we answered that question. And then we have some other questions. The first one says, who is a transition specialist when a client is enrolled in an online school? Is it based on where the individual lives in the state? If so, how can a parent go about contacting the appropriate transition specialist, especially since in my region there is currently no one hired? And if you are in one of the two regions where the vacancies are, you should be able to talk to somebody. They should have a backup person. And I know that I've seen people at meetings filling in for the vacancies. And if you can't get a hold of someone, please feel free to call me and I will get you in contact with the appropriate person. The second says, I've often heard that if a potential client does not receive SSI or any type of disability support in the form of money, they will not qualify for services. Is that true? No, that is not true. Of course, if they're receiving SSI or SSDI, they are presumed eligible. They qualify for VR services, we know that, but they don't have to be receiving them. Sometimes that's where I talked about earlier that our eligibility is not based on income, but we do take the family income into consideration when purchasing services, but that does not exclude anybody from participating in VR. So then,
we had another eligibility question that maybe ties into that.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find it. I know their services are not income-based, but are they Medicaid-based? For example, if you do not have a specific type of Medicaid, then you cannot apply for the training programs. Does that make sense?
They, again, the eligibility criteria is based on the 4 criterions that I read earlier, that we discussed earlier. They are not based on whether the person is receiving Medicaid or on income. And we do use comparable benefits. So if there's a service that can be purchased with Medicaid, then yes, we will use that, but that does not determine if the person qualifies or not.
Okay. Was that all the pre-questions?
Okay, the third question says, when you say a person has to meet eligibility criteria by a mental or physical disability, how current does the public school evaluation, the full individual evaluation that qualifies the client to receive IDEA services have to be? And I think the schools are pretty good about providing current information and updating the evaluations, but and then again too, it also depends on the disability, because there's some that are not going to change. So I would say talk to your transition counselor if you have any questions, and then also remember that if we do need current evaluations, we can also obtain them. So that shouldn't keep you from applying for services. I would encourage you to apply and then talk to your transition counselor and plan those services.
Okay. So this goes back to I think the paid work programs that you said you don't have to be a VR client to be able to access some of those programs. So there is no requirement to accept students. Was excited that something would be provided to rural districts. Larger districts, cities have resources readily available. Is there a rural outreach?
Well, we work with all schools, and I am not sure which area you're talking about, but we do work with all the schools. And again, I live in El Paso. We have rural schools, and we have counselors that actually go out there to those schools. And so I would say if you have any questions about the coverage or anything like that, like I said, I think it would be a good idea to start establishing a relationship with the regional transition specialist, and then maybe they can help you set up a meeting with the person that is assigned to your area.
Do students have to be receiving VR services to take advantage of the year-round work opportunity?
I'm not sure about that. Let me see. No, because it can be a pre-ETS activity. If all they need is the work experience, the work-based learning, that is a pre-ETS activity. And if it's a pre-ETS activity, they don't have to be receiving VR. And where they have to be receiving VR is when when we're going to purchase other support services, like maybe they need transportation, they're going to need work uniforms, it's a good idea to have a plan of services so that these other services can be purchased.
Once the plan is in place between the VR and the child and the family, should this be implemented into the IEP?
We try to coordinate services. Yes, that is the goal of the transition team. Of course, involves the student, the family members, the school, and then the counselor. So they should all be working together towards those IEP goals.
Okay. And I'm not on the receiving end of the Q&A, so I don't know if people can see some of the comments other people are making because they're statements, not questions. So I'm going to throw a few in there every now and then. But when will the East Texas counselor be established? Do you have any idea? And they said this explains why we haven't heard. So.
I'm not sure of the vacancies that are out there, but again, if I would say use your regional transition program specialist as a resource, and they will be able to give you that information. Are you talking about a counselor vacancy, or I'm not sure if it's one of the.
I think they were talking about the transition counselor vacancy.
Transition counselor.
East Texas was one of them.
Was one of them. Okay. Okay, so, one of the two. So that's the regional transition. But there should be somebody there as a backup. Somebody should be covering or assigned to that at least temporarily until they hire the new specialist. And again, if you have any questions, you can always contact one of your state office transition team members.
Okay. A lot of these services are already being provided by the public school, at least somewhere they are, because we know in some rural areas they're not. Will this responsibility be shifting to Texas Workforce Solutions from Texas Education Agency?
No.
Or is it a partnership?
It's a partnership, but as far as if it's something that is supposed to be provided through IDEA, then it still continues to be provided through IDEA. These are services that, like for example, the pre-employment transition services. These are services that are geared to give some of these students the skills that they need that maybe in the past, it's been until after they've graduated. The goal is to begin earlier and also to work in partnership with the school. So we wouldn't be overstepping any boundaries or doing anything that the school is supposed to be doing. We work in partnership with them.
We have one individual that is a special education director from a small rural district. How do we refer students to you? There are limited opportunities for employment in our area.
Yes, and we are aware of that has been an issue in every rural area. But again, the referral process is the same. You should contact your local VR office and find out who the counselor assigned to your area is, and initiate that process. And then also, again, the good thing is that with Summer Earn and Learn, the boards are involved, so they already have employer contacts in rural areas, even though, the like you said, the opportunities are limited. But that's one of the advantages, is that it's not just the counselor that's bringing their employer contacts, it's also the board. So it's a partnership. So I think that because we work with employers, they work with employers, so that enhances the opportunities for employment.
So regarding SEAL, the Summer Earn and Learn program, is there a minimum age? Can the 14-year-olds get in that, or does it start at 16, or how does it work?
It really starts at 16 because there are the child labor laws and the 14-year-olds are very limited to the number of hours that they can work, and then some employers are, kind of hesitant, but really it's 16. It's at 16. But at 14, with all the pre-employment transition services that we have right now, they can certainly benefit from job shadowing activities, informational interviews, career exploration, assessments. So there's a variety of services that they can benefit from.
Once an individual goes through SEAL and our VR services, and due to their severe disability, cannot work in an integrated setting in the community, what options and supports are there for them?
Well, again, we go back to the supported employment program. That's always an option. And so I would say talk to your counselor. If we know that that they have not been able to work that way, then maybe with additional supports, because with SEAL they do have, they can have a work experience trainer with them, to work with them as far as the job duties. But with supported employment, the supports are a little bit more intense, and it's one-to-one services.
We have a parent that has a daughter that's wanting to participate in the cosmetology program at the local high school. Is there something that the transition counselor could assist with making that happen?
I would say talk to your counselor, and then maybe with the school. You talk to both. I think with both, you can actually, maybe this is something that can be discussed at an ARD meeting. Is a good opportunity to discuss these type of things, or just schedule an appointment with your counselor and let them know that this is what your child is interested in, and if there's anything that the school can provide, then the counselor can let you know if they can assist with that.
Okay. Who are the participants on the local boards? When you were talking about the Workforce Solutions, when you talk about the board, you're talking about the Workforce Solutions.
Yes, Workforce Solutions board.
So who are the participants on those boards?
As far as the Summer Earn and Learn program?
It wasn't specific, so maybe it's how their structure is, how they're set up, how do they work?
Well, as far as the Summer Earn and Learn program, it's people that are employed in different capacities, and so they work together with our VR staff to coordinate and plan the Summer Earn and Learn activities.
Okay. If someone has a developmental delay, does it help to have an ID label? Does it make a difference?
I'm not really sure about that. I don't know, in terms of receiving more services or planning for services. I'm really not sure, but I can get back to you on that question. Maybe get a little bit more information.
If you could maybe email us that question with a little more detail, we can.
Yes, we can certainly. Yes.
Can a VR counselor assist with understanding wages and SSI?
I would say that the best option is to leave that to the Social Security benefits planners, and that is something that the counselor can assist with. I know that there's a lot of questions, like for example, Summer Earn and Learn is a perfect example where somebody who's receiving Social Security benefits will earn wages during the summer when they participate in this program, but there is an exception, so that it doesn't affect their Social Security benefits. But I would say if it's for employment purposes, and if you want to know if it's going to affect their benefits or how it will affect their benefits, or if you want to do some planning around that, talk to your counselor so that they can refer you over to a benefits planner.
Very good. Is there a list of vendors who have pre-ETS programs across the state?
Yes, there is a list. And That I don't think it's available to the public. We do have it on a SharePoint. But if you are interested in knowing who the vendors are in your area, you can again contact your regional transition specialist, and they should be able to give you that information.
Very good. Okay. Does SEAL go until 22, or can you stay in it after? Or is that the range?
That's the range.
Okay. Okay. Well, you guys got me. Can we go back a slide for the area contacts? Yes, but you will get this information as well.
Yes.
I did email it out to everyone in advance, but we did have some late registrants, so I will send it out again with the CART transcript as well.
Okay.
So if somebody wants to go back and review, like you said, you covered some things pretty quickly. So if they have questions, they can go back and take a look.
Yes, and the reason that I wanted to do that was so that we could have a little bit more time to answer some questions. But yes, I mean, if you need any additional information or any of the material that I presented, please don't hesitate to contact me, or I can forward it to Randy, and maybe she can send it out as an email.
Absolutely. Also, somebody commented that the educational service centers can also connect people in their areas with the area manager or coordinator who knows the school's VR counselor.
Yes, that's true.
So that's another
good resource.
Option.
Absolutely.
I met our VR counselor during our transition fair last week. This is the first time I have heard about the program, and I'm a special ed teacher. I also work with the transition class. I'm in the process of setting up a meeting with my VR counselor, and I hope it's not too late to get my group of students into some great programs.
I don't think so. I think it's depending on which program and what services. But it's great that you're getting them started. I think it's great that you're getting them started. But remember that these initiatives are, some of them, I presented them to you just so that you can be aware, but some of them, like I said, they're still in the process. Summer Earn and Learn, we know this is the second time around. It's happening. The year-round wages it's happening. The student Disability Navigator is already happening. So, and then some of the other initiatives are still, it's still in the process, but they are coming up. So it's a good idea to get the process initiated with your local transition counselor.
And I know that our director and we went to Lubbock last year and talked about transition and work-based learning programs and such. And so we did find out, and it's, this, I'm sure, that transportation is such an issue.
It is an issue.
And I remember talking with some teachers that their kids live literally out in the middle of like cotton fields, and they're like maybe 8 or 10 miles from the freeway, and you got to get to the freeway before you can even get into town, and it's so tough for them. So this individual is asking says that the kids want to participate in the SEAL program. Does Texas Workforce Solutions VR have any plans to work or help address the transportation problem for people with disabilities who live in rural communities who need public transport to become employed? I mean, the bus systems don't go out there that far. I remember in this area of Lubbock, they couldn't even get like Uber or Lyft or any of those other people to come out there. So
we have areas like that in El Paso, some rural areas, and they're in the same situation. And I would say that talk to your counselor to see if you can come up with some ideas on how to get these transportation services going. I know in the past, and I've been away from the field for a while, but I know that in the past they did coordinate, like for example in Lubbock, they had like the SWEET program, and so they did coordinate transportation services for people, you know, that
VR was able to do
VR
that?
was able to do that.
Oh,
So
very good.
so I would say again, the best thing to do is to talk to your transition counselor or your regional transition specialist.
All righty. Let's see, a few more here. Do VR counselors have a cap as far as how many individuals they can serve? This individual has heard that it's 100 clients, and I tell you what, even 80 is a lot.
It's a lot, yes, and there's some cases that have more and some that have a little bit less, but as far as I know, we have to serve people, and so some cases are going to be a little bit larger than others. So I think maybe it's, I don't know, I think it's, I've heard the other way around, that there's a minimum number that they should have at least 80 or 85. So, but as far as a cap, I mean, it does get difficult when you have those large caseloads, but there's some areas that, you know, it's every region has areas that are larger in population than others. So it's sometimes it's unavoidable. And again, that's why it's very important that that's a very good point, I think, that some of the transition counselors do have very large caseloads. And so I encourage you to stay in constant communication with your transition counselor. Don't lose that communication. If they call you to schedule an appointment, call them back, show up to your appointment, or don't wait until they call you. You call them, and especially if there's a service that you're interested in getting, you know, make sure that you maintain that contact, because again, there are some caseloads that are kind of big, so you have to be really proactive. So yeah.
Well, I want to say yes to this question, but is it actually achievable? Should transition start earlier for those students who are identified as ID or AU? So intellectual disability, and I don't know, AU, is that autism?
Yes.
Or I'm not sure.
Yes, I believe so, but I think that I'm not sure, but our program, it's 14 through 22. That's yeah, that's
if there were more counselors, they could probably serve, you know, a lot more people,
yeah,
a lot younger.
a lot younger.
Let's see.
But I think too, it's maybe there are some resources out there where, you know, if they're too young to be served by transition, maybe there are some resources. It's good to look for resources that are out there that can kind of help them get started, you know, getting them exposed.
I'm just reading.
Oh, okay.
No. Yeah, there's plenty of questions. I'm just trying to see if some of them are kind of the same.
Okay.
All right. Every public school district is required by law to have a transition and employment designee. The TED is a good resource for TWSVR and counselors. I don't know what TED is. Do they mean TEA? And counselors could find out who their TEDs are at the schools that they're working with. Parents should also know who their TED is for children, for their children in public schools. Does that make sense to you?
I'm not familiar.
Okay. I don't know what that is either.
Yes,
so
I'm sorry.
There's some information for some of you if that's beneficial. What are the is there a way to get a copy of the eligibility criteria for SEAL?
Sure.
how would they do that?
So, well, I can email you that information, but basically it's, again, let me see, I think I have something here. Uh, let's see. I was hoping I would have, okay, so it's so here's and I'm going to read it off to you, but I'll forward it to Randy.
Okay.
So students participating in summer earn and learn must meet the student with a disability definition, which means they are between the ages of 14 and 22, and they are currently attending school in a recognized educational setting, public, including charter schools, private schools, homeschool, or post-secondary. If the student has exited high school and is planning to participate in post-secondary education in the fall, it is acceptable to count them as currently attending for the purpose of meeting the student with a disability definition. And so we talked earlier about most employers preferring students to be at least 16 years old in order to participate in the work experience. So, however, some employers, particularly those in the public sector, may be willing to offer work experiences for younger students. So, again, that's in your local area. I would encourage you to talk to your counselor, but that is that is the requirement, and again, potentially eligible. So that's students do not have to be determined eligible for VR services to participate in the summer work program.
So, are there students whose disabilities are so severe that they would not be appropriate for pre-ETS services?
Well, I think that's difficult to say right now until that they participate in the activity, and I think that's something that you can discuss with your counselor, because your counselor, the school contact, and the child better than anybody. So maybe they can plan some services around that. I know that in Summer Earn and Learn, they do have a work experience trainer that is with them throughout the work experience, so that if they need that assistance, that one-to-one assistance. So.
And TED is transition employment designee, so
Okay,
thank you. Whoever V. Connor is. And
that's good to know.
Yes, it is. I just didn't recognize the acronym. I hadn't seen that. We have one other individual making a comment too. To start transition planning early, contact the ARC for case management services.
Oh, okay, great.
They help families navigate the maze of agency supports, and helped our parents of preschool students sign up for the Medicaid waiver waiting list that can be 10 plus years to wait for. Yeah, so that's great information.
That's very good information, and that's what I meant when I said that earlier, that it's important also to know what resources are out there, and access those resources if they can't access VR because of the age. But it's important to start planning, especially with those Medicaid waiver programs. That's good information.
And we have several other questions that we'll get to after the webinar. Okay. We'll get responses for people if we did not hit them already. One last thing though, somebody asked for clarification, and I know some people are still confused about DARS and Workforce Commission and Workforce Solutions, and we know DARS doesn't exist anymore. Could you kind of explain the difference between Workforce Solutions and Workforce Commission and how VR fits into that?
Well, so we became a combined state unit. So we had under DARS, we had Division for Blind Services, and then the Division for Rehabilitation Services, and we became one combined unit under Texas Workforce Commission. And then so most of the your counselors are housed out of the Texas Workforce Solutions offices.
But they're Workforce Commission employees.
Yes, they're
Right,
Workforce
okay.
Commission employees.
And Workforce Solutions are contractors of the Workforce Commission,
Correct.
right? Okay. So should people call VR counselors TWC or TWS?
Well, TWS. So that's it. It's TWC. It's Texas Workforce Commission Vocational Rehabilitation Services.
Okay. Okay. Because I've seen logos on some people's shirts that have the Workforce Solutions logo on the really nice dress shirt, and then so it's a little confusing. Well, I want to thank you very much for joining us today. But we are out of time, so we'll go ahead and close for this afternoon. Thank you, Polly, for the real-time captioning, and I hope that you can join us in the future again.
Sure.
We will. This has been a recorded session. We will post it. I'm not sure when, but we will post the session to our YouTube channel, and we're just in the process of starting all that. And I will let you know when that happens in case people that either miss a session or you'd like to review it again will be able to do so. So with that said, I'm going to go ahead and say goodbye to everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.
Thank you. Have a good weekend.